Good morning, Marcus Howard. How are you?
Tired, but I'm managing.
What time of day do we find ourselves?
It is literally 6:40 a.m. The sun has just risen.
So here's the thing, man. This is an all-time first podcast with coffee, and I'm super excited about it because I found another pre-dawn grinder in the Tampa Bay area. And I didn't know how many members of the tribe there were. Now I've found one more, right? And we've got a mutual friend in Rich Haruska that is also part of that tribe. And when I told him we were going to get together for this, he was like, "Okay, good. Two grinders getting together, talking entrepreneurship." But good to see you. And the reason why we're doing this so doggone early in the morning, matter of fact, the sun is rising right outside. Is you've balanced. So first of all, you juggle a lot of stuff. First of all, you're a dad, and you're a dad to two little tykes that are under the age of few years, right? So you balance just walk me through the list of the things that you juggle in your life,
Sure.
in your day.
Sure. So first and foremost, and this is quite candidly a struggle for me to do this well on a consistent basis. I'm a husband and father, completely devoted to my family. But what's a challenge is balancing being present to the three of them, all three of them, amongst all the other things I'm getting ready to list. I'm a full-time programmer at Gerdau. Mm-hmm. So from, at 40 plus hours a week, 8 to 5-ish. I'm a programmer for a full stack developer for their innovation team. They're a multinational steel company. They're globally based in Brazil, and Tampa Bay is their headquarters for North America. Outside of that, my brother and I are building an experiential marketing agency that helps colleges and other non-endemic brands more effectively engage younger audiences. So not only are we consulting with companies, but we also build a suite of products and services that we offer to those companies in addition to some other company or products. So we're consulting and building products. And in addition to that, I'm the president of the Tampa Association of Gaming. It's a nonprofit dedicated to growing the gaming industry and STEAM youth programs here in the Tampa Bay region. You may have seen the article yesterday from Tampa Bay Business Journal. Yep. In addition to that, I'm an advisor for GameCredits. It's the world's first gaming cryptocurrency that launched in 2014. I'm an esports advisor for them. There are some other things I'm under NDA for that I can't share, but that's the short list.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, let everybody get comfortable because you're involved in a lot of things, and everything you do and you're really passionate about, and they all have like big purpose to them. That's what's kind of cool about the stuff that I think that you do. And I think that's what everybody admires about you. We all follow you on social media. That everything you do with intense purpose, and more so than anybody else I think I know. But this is fun, and appreciate you getting me in this morning. I was like, well, with your schedule, we were talking. It was like, well, we can either do it at night or we can do it in the morning night or the evening night. Which night are we going to do it? So it's good. It's good. So Marcus, I've got a little tradition I do with my guests. I throw up a slide that just kind of has an opening question on it that I pull out of some of our conversations prior, and I'm going to throw this one up, and you just you can tackle it, right? And so this is your question, right? Can and why should corporate support employee-preneurship, right? So I think you're perfectly qualified to answer this question. And let's talk about that one, if you don't mind just jumping right on it.
Sure. I agree 100% that corporate should support employee. Wow, that's what happens when it goes 6:30 in the morning. The coffee hasn't kicked in. Corporate should support employee-preneurship because it builds innovation within the business, which helps them create more revenue and more revenue opportunities. You have the typical term intrapreneur. That's cultivating that entrepreneurship philosophy as it applies to an internal business, a corporate entity. And that's one of the things that my full-time employer, Gerdau, does exceptionally well. We've got multiple people who are on my innovation team that they hired who were either, already working on their own companies like I was and am, or started their own companies. And it helps us bring that perspective of the lean startup methodology and failing fast and really being customer centric to a multinational steel company. So I'm really grateful for them having that openness and willingness to invite people who may have a side hustle into the business. It's not easy, right? And I'll say here on the podcast, you and I had a conversation before. I've run against the rubber met the road a couple of times, and they've had to sit me down and talk to me about that, and I've had to make some adjustments. But by and large, it's been generally positive experience. And I've also, in addition to bringing that lean startup philosophy to Gerdau, I've helped integrate Gerdau with the local community. Just this past weekend, I helped basically the VP of HR for Gerdau connect with the local community around authentic opportunities to engage the youth for STEAM, coding classes for at-risk youth.
Yeah.
So that's something that they probably could have done themselves, but it was easier for me to do because I'm already integrated into the community through the startup ecosystem.
And Marcus, the reason I use that, it's fun to play with that word entrepreneurship because there's wantrepreneurs and solopreneurs and and intrapreneurs, right? And the reason I went with that employee-preneur, right, instead of intrapreneurship, because intrapreneurship gets thrown around a lot. It's a great thing, right? Intrapreneurship for sure. But I thought employee-preneurship was a really good one for you because you've got this really pretty amazing company, corporate company that not only supports you with intrapreneurship, that you take your knowledge and skills and you help them with intrapreneurship. You help the company that way. You make the company better, and of course they love that. But they go an extra step. They support employee-preneurship. Which basically implies that you're an employee of the company, but you've got side projects that you do that they support you in, and they don't see as a threat, and they understand that it's makes you a more whole person and makes you ultimately a better person and a better employee that kind of almost indirectly can help the company. Whereas intrapreneurship directly helps the company, but it takes a big a special company, I think, to get the value of supporting or allowing an employee to do things outside of the job.
Yeah, and I give a lot of credit to Ben, my direct report, Ben Souza. He was an entrepreneur before he started working with Gerdau. I believe he sold his company, and I can't for the life of me now remember specifically what he did, but I'll have to send you the articles. And so he can appreciate what it's like to go through this experience and the value that it creates, that journey, right? That perspective. And told me, even when I was going through that rough patch back in November, that he and Gerdau always supports me in whatever I choose to do. If it's my company and if the situation required that I go focus on that full time and leave Gerdau, they would support me regardless. Or if I decided to stay and work on it in a lesser capacity so I could focus at work, they would support me as well. But I needed to make sure that I met my responsibilities at Gerdau because that was the agreement that we made, right? We respect that commitment to Gerdau and delivering on those responsibilities.
Well, this is where I get to tell my little story that I'm so honored by. As you know, there's a very big successful consulting company here in the Tampa Bay area that recently sold. It was called TriBridge, and the biggest, just one of the most successful companies in our region and frankly worldwide. I think when they sold, they were definitely close to 1,000 consultants in the team. They would implement technology and cloud and all types of big enterprise software projects and so forth. When I was there was less than 100 of us, less than 100 employees, maybe closer to 50. And so I was there for a few years, but I went to the CEO, Tony DiBenedetto at the time, who was a couple rungs above me, by the way. I was in a cubicle and he was, but I pulled him aside one day and said, I feel like I've got this corporate thing is not necessarily for me. I feel like I've got to step away and pursue a startup, and I've got an idea. And I just wanted to tell you, it was pretty bold of me, I think, to do that. I mean, like I said, I just grabbed him in the hallway and we pulled him into a room. I kind of knew him and he kind of knew me, right? But in short, he said, Alan, I love it because he was an entrepreneur himself. That's how he started this company. and of course with his two partners. And even though they weren't an entrepreneurial company anymore, they were running like a big company. He immediately got excited about it. And I was, a key player in the team at that time as a small team, and we're all billing, by the way. So that's a pretty big piece of revenue for one of your consultants to walk out the door. He said, "Here, do me one thing." He said, "If you're not 1,000% ready to roll right now," he said, "give me a year. Give us a year, and I'll be the first one to support you when you're ready to make that move." Mm-hmm. And that really was an amazing feeling, right? That and he was like, "I will make phone calls and help you," right? And that's exactly what happened. Nearly a year later, I finally got the big idea that I wanted, right? And I made the move. And I went into his office, and it was like a big smile on his face, smile on my face. 1 year later, and he immediately closed the door and just started calling. I had appointments with investors before I could even get home that day. It was incredible, right? So it isn't that it exists out there. And I think the key to this is this being open about it. Like, I think that's the key. Some things you can't be open with because it's your, well, maybe you have to be open with everything. I don't know, but I feel like that's the commonality of both of our stories. We were upfront about it.
Yeah, I've been radically transparent with them from the get-go. And if you've followed my feed on LinkedIn or Facebook, I do the same thing because I want people to understand everything that's involved with this experience. And you and I had this conversation before as well. So much about the current ecosystem just highlights all this success and only the success. It never talks about the fact that 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, or the fact that 70% of venture capital investments fail to return investments to their investors' portfolio. It's just headline after headline of acquisition and $billion valuation and users this and users that. It's not realistic.
Right. No, it's not. And we're going to get into that topic. It's on my top 4 list. We're going to get into for sure. But before we do that, I want to jump really quick into our sponsor for this episode. So SecureStartup. So this is a cloud platform for helping startup founders handle and manage the documents, all the legal documents that go between them and investors, right? So this is a dedicated platform. So all of those, term sheets and operating agreements and purchase agreements and all those all of those, wonderful little documents that you have to pass back and forth between an investor and a startup to get sign off on. SecureStartup manages that at SecureStartup.com. Surprisingly, how few platforms are really dedicated to the startup game when it comes to those documents. So it takes a lot of the headache out of it on both sides of the equation. So that's SecureStartup, and that's spot on with what we're talking about today. I would say what I want to do first, Marcus, is we also have we have some fun backstory here, man, because when you and I first met a few years ago, when I found out that you went to Georgia Southern University, immediately, man, I was like, wow. Because you know this, my grandmother lived in Statesboro, Georgia. We're both Georgia kids, right?
Yeah.
You were born near Atlanta. I was born in Savannah, and we met in the middle somehow. We didn't meet, but somehow in Statesboro, in this little college town called Statesboro, where my grandmother lived. I was a little kid, and I'd go to her house, and I spent on and off many years in Statesboro. So tell me about, real quick, just jump this Georgia Southern for a minute, if you don't mind. Just what was it like going to that university? First of all, people don't realize how beautiful it is. First of all, it's a beautiful campus.
Yeah, it's like the Savannah of colleges, in my mind. It's a amazing experience to kind of walk through. They made it very pedestrian friendly. There's, the trees and the lakes, and it's its own little pocket of awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was there for more than 4 years. Let's see. And I can remember, I started in August 2008. August 2004. I graduated December 2008, and then I got hired on by the school to work in their IT division for another 4 years or so. So from 2004 to 2013.
Yeah.
9 years.
Yeah. So you kind of liked the place that a little bit.
A little bit.
and your brother was there too. So you talk about your brother. So this is the other cool thing about you. You've got a twin brother, right? Malcolm. And Man, and the more I talk to you about it, I've only met Malcolm maybe once, and because he actually, I think he lives in Savannah now, I think, right? Works for a big New York firm. But you were telling me that you and your brother just have this. Now it's everybody's going to understand that everybody knows that twins have a certain bond, right? But you guys have this extra bond that not all twins have, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so both of us went to Georgia Southern. I think the bond started from the video games, right? and it's how we got into technology space, into the interest of man, I need more coffee. The interest of pursuing technology careers. In the ninth grade, we were in the magnet school program, and they didn't. Our parents had to go buy us those expensive TI-83 plus graphing calculators to do like logarithmic functions and all the complicated math you need those calculators for. We discovered you could play video games on them and turn them into those Game Boys, So that's all we did in class, is play video games. So when we got to college, he pursued the computer science track, and I did information technology, which happened to be in the same college. It's the College of Engineering and IT. And our parents walked us on campus during orientation, and we happened to walk past the local grocery store on campus. And we were in the band in high school, so we had the opportunity to march in the band, and we were on that track. We just happened to coincidentally pass the store, and we asked if they were hiring. Well, our parents asked if they were hiring. They said, well, you can either march in band with a $200 stipend from the school per semester outside, or work inside in the grocery store in the air conditioning and get $200 a month. The math was really easy to do. Yeah. So we both did that for 4 years, and then we joined the same fraternity, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. It was founded in 1963 during the Civil Rights Movement. That's a strong part of our back history. I don't know if I told you, my uncle marched with Dr. King. Unfortunately, because of that, my grandmother's house was firebombed in 1972. The fire people didn't go and put the fire out. That's a strong part of our history, and so that resonated well with us, which is why we both did that. But that fraternity at the time only had one active member. So when we joined, it was me, my brother, and this third guy. Yeah. So we ended up spending a lot of time around each other there, and then we ended up getting a fraternity house. We were already we lived in the same freshman dorm. We lived in all the same dorms, basically.
Yeah. So you guys, you were telling me earlier too, what was interesting is you guys, you started growing up in an all Black neighborhood when you were a smaller kid, and then your parents moved, and then you were moved into an all white neighborhood. You absolutely flipped the whole script in the middle of your childhood.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I had that perspective of being the majority and really kind of being confused about seeing someone who didn't look like me in the space where, my skin color is the only thing that I know. In my elementary school, there's maybe 5 or 6 white kids. And it was just, I didn't treat them any differently. It was always odd to see. It was novel in my mind. And then when we moved from DeKalb County to Rockdale County, I happened to be the novelty, my brother and my sister and I, in that ecosystem. And even as we started to get through middle school and high school, I saw less and less Black people because my brother and I, again, were on the accelerated track. And unfortunately, if you don't have kind of the educational nurturing at a younger age, it's harder to get on that track as you get older. Yeah. So we ended up being, one of 3 or 4 Black people in our classes consistently from basically middle school up until high school.
But would you say that advanced kind of academic track, maybe did it, you feel like it helped a little bit because you weren't, you're already kind of so to speak, maybe special that you, as opposed to just, being one of the regulars? Did you feel like that helped or no, in terms of just feeling out of place or anything like that?
It was a bit out of place because we could feel like the Black community kind of ostracized us for being smart. And actually, people used to pick on us when we were in grade school, elementary school, for being smart. I think that's kids in general. Yeah. So ironically, I understood kind of that pressure, that social pressure for intelligence, which then translated to race. Yeah. Right? Race and intelligence.
Yeah. It's dare I say, this idea that, black kid being smart, it was that, like, that's total BS, right? But that probably popped up here and there as a kid.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
And you guys, and how did you deal with it? You and your brother, but you had each other. So did you just kind of like I mean, I know it obviously affected and bothered you, but because you had your brother, were you guys able to kind of like insulate yourselves or kind of blow it up because you had each other? Was that a big help?
Yeah, I think it created a buffer. I was telling you earlier, I think it's standard practice for grade school systems. Whenever you have twins, I think by like kindergarten or first grade, they try to separate them into different teams, because there's different teams, right? If there's 100 students, you've got 50 students one team, 50 students in the other. They try to put the twins in different teams so that they learn to socialize with other people and don't build kind of this kind of exclusive socializing ecosystem.
Right.
And so we did have that for like the first 4 years when we were in DeKalb County. But as soon as we moved to Rockdale County, we got on the accelerated track. There were only so many classes that fit that curriculum track.
Yeah.
And because both of us were in the band, that eliminated like different extracurricular activities, because band only gets hosted at a certain time, which is probably the same time as basketball, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So he and I were always socializing. It was almost like, the rest of that didn't matter as much. Yeah. And as a perfect example, I told you, my brother got kicked out of the magnet school program at the end of 9th grade because he made that C. Yeah. And I got kicked out after 10th grade. So he and I were in the same classes in 9th grade and the same classes in 11th grade, but we went to two separate schools during 10th grade. And I remember that was a very dark period for him because both of us, but more so for him, one, for having been separated, but also having to deal with the social pressure of being rejected from magnet school, because as soon as we got accepted to magnet school in 8th grade, people started picking at us more because they saw that we were leaving. I don't know if it was jealousy or envy or whatever it is, right? But people were picking at him for being kicked out, because I remember feeling that from them when I got back to the school too. But he did it by himself for a whole year.
So it's like you couldn't win either way. You got picked on, getting into being the smart kid, and then of course, then you're going to be picked on because you kind of got bumped out.
Right.
Success success has a price, doesn't it? It's like, you see this the rest of your life, right?
We had the same thing in college, right? When we joined our fraternity. So our dad's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. It's one of what they used to call the Great Eight, which became the Divine Nine when my fraternity joined that organization. And so relatively speaking, all the first 8 fraternities and sororities in that organization were all founded in like the early 1900s, like 1904 to 1911. Ours didn't get added. Ours wasn't founded until 1963 and didn't join the council till like 1980-ish. Yeah. So collectively, those 8 organizations don't think highly of my fraternity. And on campus, we got hazed and picked on regularly, like on a weekly basis.
So I got to ask you about gaming right now, because that's ultimately where, this story, will go in a big way. But you said you guys were playing games, as a kid. Like, did the gaming thing stay with you through college, and then your jobs after college? Were you guys just always still? When I say you guys, you and your brother, was gaming always there all the time?
Yeah, the entire time. Again, 9th grade, we took our math period time slot to just play video games, and in college, I specifically remember like the week that Halo 2 came out, I skipped the entire week of school. My brother did too, and my roommate, so that we could take our Xbox. This was the first generation Xbox.
Yeah. Plug
it into the TV in the lobby of our freshman dorm room and beat the game in a week. We skipped it. All 3 of us skipped an entire week of school.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That is this beautiful thing, which what every college kid should do, in my opinion, if they're that into something, right? That's just, some things deserve everything just stopping, and we'll deal with it. As a sidebar, my daughter's really into Animal Crossing. She's actually in college, which started in high school, and then of course and then in college. But she was so looking forward to this past spring break, so that she could have a whole week to just conquer Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
And she did. But then the pandemic happened, right? So instead of like 50 hours, now she's at 300 or 400 hours because, it just kept going. So
yeah, everybody's playing video games these days. And it's interesting to see. I don't know if you saw, like, I think it was October last year. The World Health Organization declared that excessive gaming was an addiction. And I'm not taking anything away from addiction because it's a serious topic.
Yeah.
But it's ironic to see, less than 6 months or roughly 6 months later, they issue another statement encouraging everyone to play video games as a social activity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, can we just say this? It's not going. This is not. This is part of our society now in a big way, and it is the new future. Like, and I think you and I had a good big conversation around this. Like, it's the brain muscle is being dramatically advanced, I think, by gaming. We need to embrace that. This is probably a lot of how humans are going to survive and thrive and evolve. It's so funny, older generation people may scoff at it, right? But this is there is, it's so funny because older generation will, they're the ones who couldn't stop consuming television, for 5 hours a day and 50 hours a week, whatever a week. And then now they don't understand why kids play so many video games, right? And meanwhile, there's no comparison between consuming, brain dead television versus all the brain activity of video gaming and how you're actually you're developing, you're doing something actually productive in a way with gaming. Maybe speak to that, like the whole, just the whole mental, maybe some of the mental advantages that people get from gaming. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I regularly joke that I learned more about business from playing video games than I did from my minor in management at Georgia Southern, and that's knock on Georgia Southern.
I got to hear this. This is good. I got to hear.
There's no knock on Georgia Southern's management program. It's excellent, but the degree to which video games engage you intellectually is sorely misunderstood.
Yeah,
you're always having to make split-second decisions. In many cases, solve very elaborate puzzles. If you're playing a multiplayer game, now you've got that social communication, right? Where you have to coordinate and plan with other people who either might be computer controlled or maybe human controlled, which makes it even more complex. And I think you and I talked about this before. There's research starting to indicate that VR video games are being used as an effective treatment for dementia in senior citizens. And there's also research that suggests that professional esports athletes are showing the same degree of brain engagement and stress that traditional sports players experience when they're on the field. Yeah. So there's just this major stigma that's evolving.
Yeah.
But it's getting less. But some generations or demographics are just not quite yet looking at everything that's in front of them and evaluating all of the value that's here. There is some negative value, right? It's sedentary. Obviously, we had talked about that there's some harassment happening in the space, but by and large, it's an amazing opportunity to engage in the future of society, which is digital, to your point earlier.
Yeah, and I would argue that this is maybe a big warm up to how we compete with computers or work alongside of, or just it coexists with computers in this future, right? I feel like this is a great way for us to get ready for the AI and the future, right? I feel like the video games is got to be a path to how we coexist in the future.
On the one hand, I'm really excited to see like the Ready Player One scenario, right? But I'm also deeply terrified of the Matrix scenario.
Right.
We're legitimately terrified because computers, I could see them just evolving exponentially, right? Yeah. Once they gain sentience, they're just constantly self-improving.
Yeah. So that would be the next game that someone should invent should be a game that literally it challenges the human player to kind of conquer and control the computer somehow, right? So that can be a way for us to somehow stay in control when AI is fully involved in here, right?
Well, I've seen two examples. I think an AI computer basically beat the world's best chess player repeatedly, and he stopped playing against it because it kept beating him. And I've seen the same thing happen in video games. Like the world's best League of Legends player has repeatedly lost against the AI built to be the best at League of Legends. So if that's the case, like I don't want to see that at scale. If I'm honest, I don't want to see that at scale.
No, so that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying could somebody invent a game or something that lets that, because there's certain things that humans can do that computers can never do. There's certain elements,
Yes, sure.
certain things. So could there be a game that plays to our strength and somehow allows us to remain with the upper hand over computers? I don't. It's a very kind of a fuzzy question, but I'd love to see, instead of us trying to keep up or compete, could there be a way for us to keep finding new ways to leverage our humanness to be on top? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's definitely unique to humanity.
Yeah.
Computers will never have that, but it's still, we need to be very careful how we evolve and innovate in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, speaking of gaming, Marcus, you mentioned earlier some of the racial challenges that even in the gaming industry, which I think a lot of people would stop and go, oh, I didn't even think of that, right? And you speak about this a lot. You spend a lot of time with it. And we talked about two sides of it. There's the kind of the trash talk part of it that happens in the game, and everybody's online talking to each other, and some of it's anonymous and all of that stuff. And then there's the people of color that are in the leadership positions in the industry that are very limited. And neither, whichever one you want to start with, but I know these are two problems in the industry.
We could talk about the trash talk piece first, and I think it has its place in esports, just like you were saying. You made a great point this past weekend that it has its place in traditional sports. It's one way to kind of psych out your opponent. It's another way to build like team chemistry and really kind of amp yourself up. So those three different things happening. But I think there's definitely a clear line between that and harassment and threats, right? None of that would be allowed, I think, in traditional sports.
Slurs, like you said.
Slurs, right? I can't remember the guy who played for the Cleveland Browns, right? That whole scandal that happened. He says that a racial slur was said to him. I didn't watch the entire thing, obviously not on that team, so I don't know what's happening. But I can understand why that would invoke, you to attack someone else, because that's just it's painful to your person, to yourself as an individual, to degrade you as a human, as a person.
Yeah,
it's just.
I almost feel like that. To me, what bugs me about it is it's kind of cowardly. Meaning, like, I feel like you wouldn't say that to me in real life. You wouldn't say that you wouldn't be brave enough to say something like that in real life. But you're sitting behind an anonymous name and you're throwing out racial slurs or maybe derogatory terms towards women or racial, like any, and making you feel more powerful and dominant, right, or whatever that's happening in that game. And and when you cross that line into some of those really nasty things, those are things you wouldn't do you couldn't do in the real world. They kick your ass.
Yeah, they would.
They kick your ass. So anyway, that's the thing about it to me. Like, it's like that's a kind of an extra license that gets allowed out there.
Yeah, you see the same problem with social media in general, right? Again, because of the anonymity. Twitter has a huge problem about it. Reddit has a huge problem about it. Twitch has a huge problem with it. And it's just something that the gaming industry needs to address, because inclusion drives growth and success. And if you're having people who feel like they can't actively participate, then you're never going to have them truly be a part of the ecosystem, and you're missing out on that opportunity to have them engaged.
Yeah, and I feel like it would just incite. Now, if I'm a person of minority, a woman, or a man of color, my first reaction is to swing back and to say something as nasty as I can in response. And now here we go. Let's go. Now we escalate. And now, how is the world? I mean, now all of a sudden, now we can just be more divided and more against each other. Let's make these battle lines between race and gender official, which is
it detracts away from the primary purpose and experience is to be socializing and having fun, right? Now you've got this other thing happening. So
how could it be policed? How could that be cleaned up?
I think the easiest thing, like you mentioned before, is addressing the culture. Yeah. Educating the community, maybe creating an incentive for people to genuinely want to educate themselves And on the other side, you can use technology to potentially like scan conversations to detect slurs or derogatory statements, and then issue warnings and then suspensions and bans. But I think you'll find, if you look into what Activision's doing, because people are doing that with their screen names, they're going to invest a lot of money into that particular solution because they're challenging their community instead of helping the community grow.
Right. Well, this is that's a good segue right into the industry leadership, right? And executives and the leadership in the industry are not represented when it comes to women, people of color. Like, you look at the executive leadership of the gaming industry, and what do you see?
I see mostly white males, and it's not a surprise to me because the gaming industry is just part of the tech industry, and in the tech industry, I see mostly white males.
Right.
I think the International Game Developers Association is kind of the global professional ecosystem or network for the gaming industry. Did a survey last year. They published back in January. I think only 2% of the gaming industry's professionals are Black. And just to put that in perspective, 12% of the population here in the US is Black. And based on the Esports survey, that fan survey that ESPN did in 2017, between roughly 20% of the fans for esports are Black. So what that's saying is that Black fans in the gaming industry over-index in terms of their engagement for esports.
Yeah.
And so you would expect to see at least some kind of representation, either at the professional level as industry professionals, working professionals, or in the competitive scene, but you don't see it basically anywhere. It's me, it's like 15 other people, and that's it.
Yeah. If you put brown on top of that number, you said 20% Black. If you put brown on that number, what are we're probably talking?
I think we're looking at close to roughly 40%.
Yeah, we're probably pushing 40%.
Yeah. I'll have to send you that. I meant to do that before, but yeah, if you add brown, like the Hispanic and Asian communities, you're looking at roughly 40 to 50%. I think 43%.
That right there deserves a dramatic pause, right? Like, when it comes to I say your industry, because you're more, I'm not the gamer, you are for sure. But when you look at that industry, that's a dramatic pause. That we're pushing 50% brown or Black players, and then the industry leadership is nowhere close to that.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge disconnect, and that's what I've been very vocal about it, particularly these last 4 weeks, because frankly,
Marcus, being vocal is an understatement. You're like one of the only people I know that will literally call out in social media. You will call out an executive of an industry that and it's awesome when you do it. Everybody kind of goes, "Whoa!" and you say, "Hey, so and so, what do you say about this?" And it's like, wow. And by the way, I've noticed you get some responses on those.
And again, I'm not just trying to throw them under the bus. Even when I did it most recently with Activision, I apologize, because I know that's got to be a very odd position. That's not something that you were hired to do, and in that conversation you weren't prepared to have. But it needs to be had either way. So somebody's going to have it. I'm going to start it if no one else will.
I like Marcus. That's what's amazing about you, man. Is you're willing to kind of push the envelope or just get it out. Like, a lot of people be afraid to do it, right? They'd be afraid to do it. And you just don't have fear around that stuff. I just can tell you, it's so impressive. It's inspiring actually, not just to me personally. I think a lot of people watch you do what you do, and you do it with class, by the way. When you do call something out, you like you just did here, you qualify it, and you make a nice statement about, hey, this may not be fair to you, or I know, you say a lot of things around it to make sure that it's being said with respect. But still, it needs to be asked, and the people in power are the only ones that can really make changes. So, but you put that out there. I think a lot of people walk away from the stuff you do and end up doing versions of it in their own lives that you don't even realize the ripple effect that I think you're having.
I appreciate that. And again, it goes back to years of being ridiculed and attacked and bullied, right? Or picked at. I just built thick skin, and I didn't used to do that when I first started my entrepreneurship journey, because I always thought, oh man, what if that keeps me from getting an investment? And then I got to the point where it's like, oh, I've been trying to raise capital for 7 years. I only raised $5,000. Who cares what I do? Because it's not going to make me less investable.
You might as well flip this thing over and do it the other way.
Right. It can't get any worse than only getting $5,000. So, again, I maintain the respect, I maintain the tact, but I challenge the status quo. I challenge the people who are in power, who have the means to create the change. I don't have the means to directly create the change, but I have the means to create the conversation, to at least invite the people in power to make the change or hold them accountable if they don't.
I just like the way you do it. You just do it with respect and professionally, and I think that's the coolest part about it. And by the way, so that's a great segue into investment, right? So, $5,000, Marcus, we got to do better than that. We got to do better than that. And so let's talk about that. So you and I, as we know, I work in the startup game and raised capital personally years back with my own startups. And now I try to help other startups raise capital. And so you're talking to somebody who probably sees as much of the other side of the table as anybody. And this is a really good conversation for you and I in terms of why, we'll separate. We know that women are really are disproportionately able to, they're disproportionately gain venture capital. It's deplorable, but I want to talk about and that gets talked about a lot, by the way, and there's a lot of effort to try to improve women, getting more women founders in the game, getting more capital towards women founders, and I see slowly this is little rung by small rung being improved on the women founder side, but you do see a lot of activity there, and that's really a good thing. And by the way, the data shows that women-led companies just dramatically outperform men-led companies, startups that is, by way of ROI and investor return. We go down the stretch, and so that's really great to see that happening. Let's talk about the black male, right? In terms of raising capital, trying to raise money for their fund, for their venture. Talk about that for a minute from your perspective. Walking in right from the application process to the first call to, if you're lucky enough to get in the room and do a presentation. Walk me through what it's been like.
I'll use one example. I won a startup competition in 2016 up in Pennsylvania. I think I talked to you about this. It was a global competition. We got selected the top 3, flew up there, had to take vacation from my day job. Again, bootstrapping, trying to make it happen. And you've seen, I always dress professionally, but I dress to the culture of my business, my industry. So I wear my sports coat, I wear, comic book t-shirt,
underneath,
jeans and nice sneakers, clean sneakers.
By the way, like so many white guy founders, by the way, that's pretty standard fare for white guy founders.
Yeah. So I go to this event and, it's maybe 100, 150 people inside of this remodeled fire station that is now a venture capital building or fund. And I'm one of maybe 10 or 15 black people there, but I'm one of only 1 or 2 people who is black, who's there, who's not on the wait staff, right? Everyone else is like serving food or some non-guest role, right? Wow. And I remember very vividly, this lady gave me this look of disdain. She had her nose turned down when I stepped in because everyone else was kind of dressed like cocktail affair, right? Or evening networking attire. Mm-hmm. And I show up and I'm not serving food, right? But I'm also not dressed in evening attire. And she didn't know that I was one of the finalists, and then I ultimately went on to win that competition. And then the next morning before I flew back to Florida, because I had to go back to work, I had a chance to speak with the managing director. I can't remember his name, and I'm not going to call him out even if I did. But if I took that opportunity to see if he could invest in my company or what his thoughts were about me participating and involved in that event. His statement to me was, "We're so glad that you were part of this experience because we never get any black applicants to any of our events." Mm-hmm. And I thought that was odd because I know that there's got to be a healthy black ecosystem in every community.
Yeah.
But for some reason in his ecosystem, he wasn't able to get connected to it. And so it's not, I don't think that he's racist. I just think that people are naturally social individuals, and they like to stay connected to people who look like them and relate to them and work in their professions. And if you don't actively try to seek out inclusion or different experiences, it's easy to create a tunnel and a funnel where you exclude out things that just don't look and work like you.
You know, I think you just nailed it right there. You and I have talked about this at length about that, you know, I think it's safe to say that the investor community isn't, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, is not inherently racist, right? And or even to a certain degree anti-woman. What it gets down to, we think, what it gets down to is like lazy thinking, right? And it even gets down to, we talked about this, is that ultimately at the end of the day, subconsciously almost, right? Someone ultimately goes with the person or the thing that looks like them or they can relate to and feel comfortable with, because it has some kind of connection to their past or who they are. It looks like them or feels like them or something they can relate to, right? And that goes with that goes for if you're buying something off the shelf, or every kind of it's kind of a human nature in life. We tend to like to gravitate to things, and investors. That's one of our theories, right? When you and I talked, is that one of the reasons why so many white males are able to gain investment over, you know, women and even male minorities, is because the investors themselves they see a younger version of themselves, right? And it also feels like, hey, I know what this person, kind of what their worldview and frameworks are, and that's familiar, and I kind of. And you know, investors always think about risk and comfort and know, like, and trust, right? And all of that stuff, without them realizing, gets baked into their lens, right? And now a woman or a black man is not as familiar. So it takes extra non-lazy thinking for them to kind of like, okay, how can I begin to try to understand this person, right? And we talked about it. Just it's kind of it's not as much purposeful as it is almost just not willing to put the work in.
Right. It's a form of risk aversion, right? Trying to do that requires you to think, to relate, to understand, to be empathic for, and that collectively creates stress, right? And stress is a trigger for anxiety and fear. And that, again, like you said, being risk averse, they're going to avoid the things that create risk, anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that, and then it's also kind of the laziness that's built into the model, right? If the model, it's a bias that starts from the foundation and just continues to self-reinforce. So if you have a portfolio of 100 wins and all of your wins are from white male founders who are 34 or 28, then your firm's thesis becomes that demographic.
Give us more of those. Give us more of those, right?
Right.
Right. That's it. Right. It's like this self kind of, it's and what's interesting, what reason why we call it lazy thinking is because if you really want to go look at the data about, what women and men of color can bring, and you look at their success record, it's better. It's better. And so it's one of those things where, if being more data driven and being willing to understand what that opportunity is. And frankly, too, I would say, and this is something I want you to comment on. I think a black male founder just can take you to places that a white male founder can't take you in the world, right? Worldview can open up things that you otherwise, as an investor, as a company, couldn't access. And I'm not talking about just access in the black community. I'm talking about the way we think about problems, the way solving problems, the way there's just a lot of different ways of attacking things there. And we know that women do things a lot differently and better in cases, but I think black males also, bring a lot to the table that the average white male won't have.
Yeah, I think your experiences, define your perspective, and then you bring your perspective to the problems that you face in everyday life, including startup challenges.
Yeah. So
there's definitely, and I think the reason that you see that women and minority-led businesses, or more generally more diverse teams, are more successful is because they can bring that diverse range of perspectives to creating creative solutions. right? As opposed to just having like this one singular perspective and an approach towards solving a problem, especially now in today's global ecosystem, right? You've got a diverse customer base, right? Who may have different needs of your products or services. And if you only have one perspective in delivering those, then you're not addressing the needs of the entire customer base. Whereas a diverse group can better address that, which means they can potentially generate more revenue. I think that's what you're saying.
Absolutely right. And that's really also too, I think you're betting on the future. I think if you're an investor, right? Because this is, we know every decade that clips off, we're more and more diverse as a country and as a world. And not to mention the international doors that are opening. So it's not even a safe, I'm going to say it's not even a safe a bet to bet on the white male. Honestly, if you really want to step back and look at where you should be placing your bets for the, and by the way, investing is long term when it comes to the startup game, right? You're looking at 10, 20-year type runways, right? So if you step back and look at it, it's a much smarter bet to place a bet on a team of diversity, not just a single founder, but the team, whether it be women or men of color. They're more likely to, that's going to be the future world that we're heading to. They're more likely to be successful over the next 20 years, given the way our world is becoming more and more diverse.
Yeah, I think, to your point, if you're just investing in one demographic, it's ironic because, as I understand it, very successful investors hedge their bets. They build a very diverse portfolio. They try not to over-index in one sector. But if you're only investing in white males who are 28, you were doing exactly that, right? That's a high-risk investment strategy. Yeah,
I would argue that, in 10 years, you can realize that you kind of you really had some error as an investor, and now you can watch the world have this big diverse success trajectory happening all around you in the world, and you didn't get to play a part because you were too lazy thinking, too narrow thinking, too busy investing in what you were familiar with and what looked like you, and just not smart. Sometimes you have to appeal to investor types just from pure business smart, right? And it's just not smart, even as an investor. It's not.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see some of that starting to change. I have seen here locally and across the country, people launching new opportunity funds. But I feel like part of that is people throwing money at the problem instead of addressing the real solution. And the other part of it is it's tremendous PR, right? So I question whether or not it's sincere and how much of it is actually self-serving.
Right.
Because for a perfect example, here in Tampa Bay, James Faison runs the Mainframe. He's been trying to raise a $10 million fund to invest in Black-owned businesses for the better part of a year or 2 years. And, he's gotten no traction here in the local ecosystem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now we've got these funds popping up to invest in early stage Black businesses.
Yeah, ran by white guys.
Right, by white guys. And so that it just could just as easily just give the money to him because they're never going to be able to match his ability to identify quality talent because they've not done it for however long, 10 plus years of their investment history, right? And again, it's not to say that they're racist. It's just you don't have that skill set. So while you may get an investment here or there, you're not going to get the best possible deal flow as somebody who lives in that ecosystem, who speaks that language.
Yeah, I think this is a great time. I just love coming back to the future. I love beating the drum on the future. Like it's you're just not smart. You're just not being a smart investor if you're not looking ahead and realizing that this is the world that this is how the world is getting better and bigger all the time. And I heard, I know we're getting close to the top, and I want to get you on with your day. I hear some kiddos in the background, and I know that we got up early so we could do this before the job started. I think we covered all the big topics I wanted to cover. I think really where I would like to leave it is just talking a bit about what kind of message. The one thing we didn't touch on enough, I think, was the success bias. I think that's a good spot I'd like to touch on before we go is, the mental game of entrepreneurship, right? And this is colorblind, right? We all have to struggle with this. It's between the ears, and all of the headlines of raising more capital, or like you said, valuations or acquisitions, and I call it success bias. We don't get enough of this. Meanwhile, all of us are on the struggle. We're all in the struggle, and we're all in entrepreneurship, right? But we don't get to read about struggle, and there's not enough talk about struggle, right? I personally feel, and that's why with my speakers in my classroom and on this podcast, I usually try to push people to talk about the struggle, because I feel like that's more inspiring to people. Not telling me about all your success, but tell me about what you had to struggle through. So I feel like, just from an entrepreneur perspective, if you don't mind commenting a little bit on that, and maybe some of the unique struggle you've had that is not even race related, that's just entrepreneurship struggle.
Great question. And that's why, again, I've been so radically transparent about my journey, because I recognize that as well. Like, I don't know if what I'm doing now will be successful or if it'll fail. And if it is successful, I don't want to have contributed to the problem of like only showing people after the point that I was successful. And so I think the easiest, it's also difficult for me to like recount with accurate detail every struggle I've gone through. Yeah. So the best thing that I could do is just be very transparent about the here and now as I succeed and fail, because now you get kind of the full understanding of what it's like in the day in life of a bootstrap entrepreneur who can't raise venture capital, but also needs to work a full-time job, which means another 20, 30 hours a week, getting up early in order to make these types of things happen. Yeah. And it's funny because my wife and my in-laws, they joke at me, say that, here goes Marcus's entrepreneurship diary, right? But it's important because I want to be able to point back, and show people that when they look at something that I say that happened, it happened exactly the way that I said it did. And it's not me like repurposing the context of an event just to fit the success bias, right?
Yeah. So Marcus, you're clearly, in that build-up struggle. You're a dad with 2 little kids, of course, married, and your family, and the full-time job, and you keep these side projects going. Let me ask you a great question. I don't know if I always ask you, where's Marcus in 5 years? What would be a place you'd like to be? Let me ask you different. Where would you like to be in 5 years with your business and entrepreneurial life?
I'd like to have an exit, so that I can have the ability to focus. I think I do a decent job of managing what I have now, but I think if I could focus 100% on entrepreneurship in the gaming industry, I could exponentially grow the impact I could create in the ecosystem. I just don't have that luxury right now. But I'd love to run a venture capital fund. I'd love to run a publishing studio for family-friendly indie games. I still believe that the gaming industry's biggest problem and opportunity is game discovery. 75% of all PC games are created by independent game developers. But as of roughly, this is 2014, so the stat's old now. It most likely is worse. Less than 2% of the global gaming industry's revenue went to indie games. Yeah. Or rather, indie games created less than 2% of the global gaming industry's revenue, even though they produce 75% of the content on PC. I actually believe that problem exists across all platforms, but the data is only accurately available for PC.
Right.
So I want to create an ecosystem where small businesses can be sustainable, because I believe in small businesses as the future of our business ecosystem.
Right. Marcus, you brought up PC. This is gaming that's on the personal computer, and gaming. We got Xbox and PlayStation console games. We've got the PC, which is the physical computer, and we've got mobile and all these different platforms out there. And I was talking. You and I were talking about why we don't see more players of color get to the professional ranks or rise to the ranks in gaming. And I was, you pointed out something to me that I didn't know, of course, and didn't think of, and most people I don't think of, but you were explaining to me that the best games, the ones that really drive the biggest competition, require the most amount of hardware by way of PC hardware, video cards and memory and you said you need about $3,000 to really have a PC that can really perform the kinds of games that people compete and go to the next level on. And the little light bulb went off when you were telling me this. Is like, and you kind of went, you were like, Alan, this could be one of the reasons why we don't see enough players of color rising the ranks of professional gaming.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have a high-end machine with a good graphics card, and you need a good screen that's 4K, right? Because every little detail means the difference between you winning and losing. If you can see, like, standard quality monitors don't have the definition where you can see someone virtually 1,000 feet away, right? But if you have a 4K monitor, you can see them. And if you've got someone, and I hate to use a gun game as a metaphor, but this is the only one that makes sense right now. If you have somebody in your sights, and because you have a low-res screen and you can't see that someone's standing there, but they have a 4K screen and they can see you, they can shoot you, but you can't shoot them. Right. So there's that. So it's the high-end machine with the expensive graphic cards, and graphics cards can easily be $1,000 just in the card, right? Then you need the hard drive, a solid-state drive, and the motherboard and the CPU. All this performance helps
keyboard.
you.
Didn't you tell me the keyboard was?
Yeah. Expensive keyboards could be like, $50 to $100. You get expensive mice. The more expensive the mice are, the more precision they have, right? And precision matters. Again, if you're shooting, precision definitely matters. Then the headphones, there are higher quality, like $200-$300 headphones that allow you to hear footsteps, where the average headphone wouldn't let you hear. So like directional, you can hear somebody is 2 o'clock or your 8 o'clock. Your headphones give you like 360-degree, good headphones, 360-degree sound, just like you would in real life, right? So that kind of competitive advantage, it means the difference between winning and losing a match and being professional. And then you need like that equipment. You need high-speed internet, right? Because if you have lag kills, right?
Lag kills.
And you need high-speed internet, and then you need time and space to train, just like you would if you wanted to be really good at basketball or football, right? You need a facility or the equipment in order to do that, and potentially a coach. Some of the best pro athletes as younger students were coached. Yeah. So if you can't afford the equipment, you can't afford the internet, you can't afford the coach, then it's all the chips are stacked up against you.
So this $3,000 PC, that's beyond the budget of most a lot of families. I mean, that's not even going to happen.
Yeah, it's not. And I was on an international esports and gaming call a couple weeks ago, and there's a Black individual there who's from the UK, and he made the great point that when he was in school, he used his student loans to save up for a computer, where he could have spent it on beer or sneakers or whatever. And so I do agree with him with that, right? If you want something bad enough, you'll find the means to create that. Yeah, but that being said, there are so many people who don't have to go to that extreme in order to be successful.
Middle class, white America, $3,000, little Johnny for Christmas, here it comes, right?
Right. And then you look at Activision, and again, I'm here to help them get better at this, but they have the Call of Duty League, and when you go and see the people on the stage, they're only playing on PCs and they only have white contestants. But Call of Duty as a game exists on console and on mobile devices. But the company is not giving the same kind of league support, competitive support for console and mobile as they do on PC. That's something they could very easily do. They could start a console league and a mobile league. Some games like Fortnite allow you to play across devices, right? It's a challenge because you don't have the same level of precision on a mobile device that you have on with a mouse, but they could definitely change the league structure to make it more inclusive, and they haven't.
Right. So there are some economic factors there that a lot of people I don't think realize when it comes to that. And I don't, what the answer could be there's a lot of cool answers. I mean, for sure back to you in 5 years, I could see you doing so many cool things with the community the gaming community. And maybe I could even see you helping, young kids of color get access to those kinds of equipment. Just today, I read in the paper that my local county here Pinellas, they're literally handing out laptops. This came out this morning. I think it's 14,000. I think the number was, they're handing out laptops in my county, which obviously is going to be affluent white county, right? And literally handing out laptops because of the coronavirus. Now you have to work from home, and it just gives you an idea some disparity there. Economics. Such a factor for this kind of race issue is so much tied to economics.
Yeah, I'm working with Pastor Murphy of Mount Zion Progressive Baptist Church in South St. Pete. I helped him add Esports to his proposal for Tangerine Plaza. I don't know if you've seen that in the news recently. It's a strip mall that was built over what used to be crack houses in the urban community in South St. Pete. And his church and his community helped get those crack houses bulldozed. But they had a sweet bay go into that strip mall. And unfortunately, because there wasn't enough commercial interest from outside the urban community in that area, that low income community, the sweet bay wasn't sustainable. So they left. And then Walmart came in. Same problem, big name brand, but the urban community there, I think like the average household income is like $40,000. So it wasn't just enough money to sustain that restaurant or that grocery store. So they left. So the city more or less repossessed the property and wanted to bring something back into it, but they want it to be grocery related because otherwise there's a food desert in that area.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can't get access to fresh goods and groceries, which creates a host of health issues.
Yeah, probably plenty of fast food at best, right?
But yeah, right. But they also wanted it to be an innovative model because they know if just another grocery store goes in there, if it doesn't attract money and traffic and business from outside that urban community, that nearby urban community, the same thing is going to happen. So I actually added a esports STEAM center concept to their proposal where we would put 30 computers, basically a STEAM lab inside their fresh goods concept so that when parents go to get fresh goods, they have something for their kids to go do. That those computers can be both esports machines and also machines to learn how to build video games and learn the code. The goal is that we could help these kids become entrepreneurs and maybe even get the skills they need to go get hired at these lucrative career opportunities right here in Tampa Bay. Imagine if your household income is like $40,000 and then your 18-year-old child comes in and says, hey, I got hired at entry-level role at 60 grand, right? Now that you've doubled basically the household income for that house, and you can scale that across the entire community. Imagine what that would do to South St. Pete. Yeah. Imagine what that'll do to Tampa Bay. So that's what I'm really excited about. Projects like that, I'm really passionate about.
Those are the kind of systemic, like foundational things you can do. They're like planting seeds. It's almost like a garden. It's like planting a seed. It doesn't necessarily instantly grow, but if you keep watering it, that thing, it becomes a tree or a large, and then it can't be blown over by a storm, and it's not going away.
Right.
People don't realize the power of that stuff and how again, economics is so tied to a lot of these problems that we have in society. A lot of it is tied to economics in so many big ways, and it's sometimes people like to think a lot of times it's just they throw the race thing there, and but there's so much economics tied to the race problems we have, and if we can get to the economics and things, we can solve a lot of things above that.
I agree with you. I have to send you this video I saw from John Hope Bryant on LinkedIn. He basically explains 400 years of the history of Black wealth in about 15, 20 minutes.
I watched it.
Okay, you saw it.
Because you said it, I watched it. It was good. It was really good.
Yeah.
He did a freestyle. He did a freestyle. It was
it was freestyle. It was awesome. He runs a group or a foundation called the Hope Foundation or something. Yep. It's dedicated to, and it's not primarily the Black community. It's low income community. He's trying to increase financial equity. So helping people raise their credit scores above that 500 area that you heard him reference, where all crime happens around the country, regardless of skin color. But it predominantly affects, the Black community. And then, going on from there to help people learn how to do real estate investment the same way that he built his wealth. So I'm glad to see that he's doing that. I want to do something similar in, the video game and esports space.
Well, this is what's cool. I'm going to wrap this. We're going to wrap it up right here. This is what's great. I love how we finished on this. Just this idea of the Marcus Howard of 5 years from now, because I think that's what's cool, man. Because we all know, everybody in this community in Tampa Bay who know, like, and love you, man. Like, you're our guy that we know we're going to see big stuff in 5+ years from now. You know, and you know, you're raising kids, and you know, you're trying to you got a family, and you're doing so many things that doesn't allow you to go at it full time. But you got a lot of people that admire and support you, and it's like you're going to be one of those guys in Tampa Bay that's already changing Tampa Bay, whether you don't realize as much as you are. I promise you don't realize, but it's gonna be fun to watch you do more and more. It really is.
Thank you, and I appreciate the community support. Right, I'm definitely not doing this by myself. You know, I thank God for the support. I thank my family, both my immediate family here in Tampa Bay, and then my family, my parents who live in Atlanta. You know, they've been supportive of the entrepreneurial journey for the whole 7 years. You know, and that's not easy. Just having to explain to them what we've been doing and finally understand it. Them challenging us, and it again, you know, it hasn't been smooth sailing. There was one point where we almost got bankrupted. We received one cease and desist. We had to issue another cease and desist. We almost had to issue a restraining order. I've had to sleep on the ground, you know, not the ground, but like the floor of my house when I lived in Georgia, because we tried to grow too quickly, and then we couldn't pay rent, so that the power got shut off. I had to, here in Florida, I've had to eat popcorn as a meal replacement for weeks. I've had to decide between,
back when your single days of trying different startups, right?
Right. Trying to figure it out, you know, making what I thought was a good decision and having to learn the hard way that it wasn't. I've got battle wounds for days.
Man, you know, that's going to be part 2 when I bring you back. We're going to dive into that stuff, because that's usually the stuff I go into in these things, right? The popcorn and the sleeping on the floor and all that stuff, man. And then, but then you got smart and found a great partner in your wife, and got married, and and now you got that great company you work for, and you're resetting and reloading, and you know, and I think that's pretty cool. So probably should come back and tell me those stories.
Yeah, I've got plenty of them. We can do several. We can do a series.
Good, that's a series. Well, Marcus, let me let you get after it. Thank you so much for giving me your morning, and now you're going to be a little behind the rest of the day, thanks to yours truly. But I appreciate you doing that. I really do, and can't wait till next time.
All right. Well, thank you, Rich Haruska, the entire Tampa Bay community, for supporting me and getting behind me. I still need more support with what we're doing on gaming and esports. So definitely I'll lean on you to help me figure that out. We could create. I want to end on this note. Georgia's gaming and esports industry in 2018 generated $830 million of direct economic impact. Just Georgia. The global esports industry is just over $1 billion. So the gaming and esports industry in Georgia almost eclipsed the global esports industry. We could bring that same economic impact right here to Tampa Bay, but I can't do it myself. TAG is just 4 or 5 people. We can't do it ourselves. We need businesses and investors and local government officials and schools to get behind us to make this happen. And we're here to do the work. We're here. We're qualified. We're eager to do the work. We just need the support to make it happen.
Love it, man. That's a beautiful place to end it. And count me as someone in your corner that, frankly, this just you and I getting, reconnected here really, you got me inspired on this topic. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, have a great week. We'll be in touch soon.
Go rock on, man. See you soon.
All right.
All right.
See you.